From that time, a mesmerizing wedding guest completely overshadowed one of the MCU's most powerful heroes, to the moment audiences found themselves being hypnotized by a brusher in the background. These are some utterly wonderful pieces of extra work. And sweeping his way into history, Quantum of Solace. Throughout his time playing the most iconic secret agent on planet Earth, the blonde bombshell known as Daniel Craig rarely found himself being upstaged by anyone he was sharing the screen with. However, there was a moment during easily the least adored of his 007 flicks, when one hilarious extra did exactly that in Quantum of Solace. As James Bond sits on his motorcycle and unleashes his best broody stare, it's simply impossible not to turn your attention to the bloke to the left of Craig doing a bit of sweeping. Only this particular quick brushing down of the dock floor bizarrely appeared to involve the scrubbing of thin air. Maybe that dude was just practicing his cleaning technique in the middle of his shift. Perhaps he was simply rehearsing a dance number for a musical he was about to star in. Either way, this guy managed to become a background superstar through his curious sweeping method, with his strange brush with Bond being one of the most memorable moments to come from the otherwise forgettable 2008 feature.
Stick Boy Highlander. Based on the 1986 film of the same name, the oft-forgotten Highlander TV series isn't exactly the stuff of small screen legend, which explains why a random moment like this has gone down as one of the show's most memorable scenes. See, in the season 5 episode Comes a Horseman, there's a flashback scene in which the 4 horsemen raid a Bronze Age settlement, killing several civilians and generally just causing a right old mess. One of their first victims is an unnamed extra who runs towards the camera while carrying a massive pile of sticks. In a moment of panic, he throws his sticks to the ground in an effort to lighten the load, but this ultimately proves fruitless, and the horsemen chop him down before he can escape. After the episode aired, this random character was affectionately dubbed Stick Boy by fans of the show, and he was praised for absolutely legging it across that uneven terrain, holding onto his precious sticks until the last possible moment. So yeah, God bless you, Stick Boy, your perseverance is an inspiration to us all. The extra running away from the Chitauri, the Avengers. The Avengers movies are so jam-packed with A-list actors and digital mayhem that you would be forgiven for not paying any attention at all to the extras ducking for cover amid all the chaos. There is one exception, however, in 2012's original Avengers movie. Near the start of the iconic Battle of New York, as the Chitauri descend upon the city and Cap, Black Widow, and Hawkeye arrive on the scene, dozens of civilians can be seen fleeing from a giant fireball and desperately trying to get themselves to safety. Now, for the most part, the extras actually look like they're just taking a pretty casual jog considering how life-threatening the moment is supposed to be. However, there is one person wearing a striped shirt who absolutely just books it across the bridge, pelting the pavement like their life absolutely depends on it, and in turn giving an all-timer extra performance. Now everyone else is alright, but that's someone genuinely running for their life. Sadly, the person in question has never been identified, but she certainly deserves to be recognized here.
Hey Malkovich, think fast, being John Malkovich. Contrary to popular belief, the wonderful moment when John Malkovich gets rocked by a beer can sent flying out of a car by a passenger was not a completely improvised one. But that still doesn't change the fact that it's one of the finest extra performances ever to speed past a camera. According to the titular star himself, director Spike Jonze actually almost deleted the throw in the script due to time constraints. However, after claiming no one would be able to nail Malkovich in the head with the tin in a moving vehicle, a number of folks nearby offered to try, with John Cusack's writer partner then eventually being given the chance to hit the actor. And on top of the brilliant delivery of Hey Malkovich, think fast, followed by the terrific sound of the can connecting with an infuriated Malkovich's noggin, that this chucking was actually brilliantly captured on the first try simply makes an already superb and quite iconic moment that little bit more fantastic.
The Middleton Doppelgänger, The Crown. The Crown is one of those shows that can dominate the online conversation, and that's exactly what happened when its 4th season hit Netflix in late 2020. Around this time, fans grew attached to one particular extra seen in the 6th episode, who acted the hell out of her brief moment on camera. Responding to Princess Diana with the exact same energy as a dog reuniting with its owner after a long time apart, she looked like she was going to burst with happiness. But her incredibly sweet, convincing performance wasn't the only reason the internet took a shine to her. See, instead, and I can't believe that I'm saying this out loud, but it's true, some fans believed that this extra was none other than Kate Middleton, you know, the Duchess of Cambridge, enjoying a royal cameo. Admittedly, you can sort of see the resemblance in some stills, but other angles make it clear that this woman in fact isn't actually Kate Middleton, duh. Margarita Man, Jurassic World. My hero, my world, my idol. Jurassic World is a serviceable but forgettable blockbuster for the most part, though anybody who noticed this extra while watching the movie likely still remembers them all these years later. When all hell breaks loose and the dinosaurs start attacking the patrons of Jurassic World, the park's main square descends into chaos as customers attempt to run to safety from the pterodactyls. Hilariously, we can briefly see one man running away from the carnage while vice gripping a margarita in each hand, and even attempting to sip one of them as he disappears out of frame. The 2-second clip quickly went viral shortly after the movie's release, and Margarita Man even became an unexpected cosplay character in 2015.
The Force Cake Return of the Jedi. There are some out there who would have you believe that the visual of a dude on Tatooine being seemingly knocked over by a gust of wind during Star Wars Episode 6 Return of the Jedi was little more than a combination of bad choreography and camera positioning. But they'd be wrong! Instead, when Luke Skywalker lets loose his boot whilst attempting to fight his way through Jabba the Hutt's goons, what you were actually watching was the result of one particularly committed extra making the absolute most out of a ridiculously powerful force kick, folks. Hell, Mark Hamill himself even confirmed it. And this Jedi Master wouldn't lie to his Padawans all over the galaxy now, would he? You know you've accidentally produced a special and properly unforgettable Star Wars moment when folks are talking more about you being force-booted in the face than Boba Fett being sent flying to his Sarlacc doom. And after taking one of the silliest looking kicks in movie history, it's safe to say this extra will be remembered for a long time. A long time.
Hand crank guy, Star Trek. The Enterprise is a very busy place, and each member of the crew has an important role to play in keeping the ship running smoothly. But wait a second, what on earth is this guy doing? In Star Trek Season 3 episode The Lights of Zatar, there's a quick shot at the 37-minute mark where William Shatner walks past an extra who appears to be cranking an invisible wheel against the wall. At least that's what it looks like in the low-resolution GIFs and images of this moment that are scattered across the web. If we do some cranking of our own though and boost the quality to HD, we can see that this chap actually is turning something, it's just that the material is quite hard to see. Either way though, this extra caught people's attention due to the incredible amount of effort he poured into his cranking task. Take one look at this guy, he definitely had his Weetabix in the morning. The disapproving video store customer, Scream. Generally speaking, extras are supposed to do as little as possible to draw attention to themselves in any given scene, especially when major characters are talking to each other in the foreground. But just as Wes Craven's Scream broke so many other cinematic rules, it too gave an extra a brief moment to shine. In one memorable scene, Randy and Stu are discussing the killer terrorizing Woodsboro, and when Stu asks Randy why suspect Billy would dare try to kill his own girlfriend Sydney, Randy callously replies, quote, "There's always some stupid bullshit reason to kill your girlfriend." Viewers who pay close attention to the scene though might notice that a blonde-haired woman in a blue jacket is browsing movies in the aisle behind Randy. And though out of focus, it's clear that she's paying concerned attention to Randy's increasingly deranged diatribe. After he talks about Stu being a suspect, the woman looks around the store as if to say, "Is anyone else hearing this arsehole?" before shaking her head and then just walking out of shot. It's unclear whether the extra went into business for herself or was directed by Craven to act this way, but it's a great piece of low-key acting regardless.
So many, we're gonna need a bigger entry, Jaws. The folks of Amity Island could regularly be seen gathering and sprinting for their lives around the likes of Martin Brody and the rest of the memorable characters found in Steven Spielberg's horrifying 1975 blockbuster Jaws. And with so many extras being needed to fill out these beach town crowds, a few of those background artists diverting attention away from the main figures in front of the camera was pretty much inevitable. Sure enough, on multiple occasions in Spielberg's classic flick, extras stole the spotlight in various different ways. There was the bloke who decided to wear a blatant smile across his mug during one of Bruce's first attacks, while the rest of the folks at the beach were losing their minds over the shark. Then you have the peculiar guy in a bucket hat, trying to squeeze his way into as many frames as possible when Brody and Hooper are checking out the tiger shark. Mayor Larry Vaughn regularly finds himself having to deal with a few background performers attracting viewers' wandering eyes too. A young child works his way into shot with a noticeable frown, as Larry asks why someone isn't going for a dip. And one particularly excited extra also steals all the attention away from the mayor when he's letting folks watching the news know that amity means friendship, giddily waving her arms and distractingly throwing up a peace sign during her big moment. Put simply, none of these extras wasted their opportunity to be remembered in what turned out to be one of the most famous movies of all time.
The shocked students, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Sometimes a blink and you'll miss it moment can add that little bit of texture to a scene, really bringing the whole thing to life. And that's precisely the case with this pair of extras who got roughly 5 seconds of screen time at the end of Earshot, an episode in Buffy the Vampire Slayer's 3rd season. As Buffy and Giles discuss the events of the episode while walking through the school grounds, Buffy ends their conversation by calling Giles out on sleeping with her mother. In the foreground, Giles loses his concentration and thumps into a tree, but in the background, 2 student extras turn towards the camera with a perfectly timed WTF expression in response to Buffy's scathing remark. It's unclear whether they were told to do this or whether they just thought it seemed natural, but whatever the case, these lads made the absolute most of their teeny tiny roles in the land of Buffy. The nuclear vessels lady, Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. The 4th Star Trek movie, The Voyage Home, sees the crew of the Enterprise transported to 1986 San Francisco, where Uhura and Chekhov are tasked with finding a nuclear reactor which will allow them to return to the 23rd century. The two of them end up asking random passers-by how they can locate a reactor in Alameda, or nuclear vessels as Chekhov calls them with his accent. Though the extras were reportedly directed not to answer the pair, one of them nevertheless gave it a shot. Extra Layla Saracalo decided to give the duo an impromptu response, saying, quote, "I don't know if I know the answer to that, I think it's across the bay in Alameda," inspiring Chekhov to, of course, improv the famous response, "That's what I said, Alameda." As it turns out, Saracalo wasn't originally planning to appear as an extra in the film at all, but did have an ulterior motive. That's because her car had been impounded on the day of filming after she missed a warning to move it for the shoot. In order to make some wonga to free her car from the impound, then she signed up to be an extra, and while the filmmakers expected her to ignore Uhura and Chekhov like all of the other extras, she decided to engage with them.
Stealing the whole damn scene, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. There was only one cameo MCU fans couldn't stop talking about after Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Sure, the arrival of a certain Reed Richards in full Fantastic Four attire was a fun addition to the multiversal mayhem, but John Krasinski's brief performance as the famous Marvel figure paled in comparison to one outstanding wedding guest. As the titular sorcerer waited for Christine Palmer to walk down the aisle on her wedding day, Stephen Strange began chatting with his fellow Doctor Nicodemus West. And it's here when the two docs were completely overshadowed by one absolutely hypnotic extra perched on the bench behind them. Rather than taking the safe approach of just having a basic conversation with another guest, this background performer shines during the moment she knows she's in shot, pulling many an expressive face and just generally being as hilariously animated as possible over Strange's shoulder. Sure, her colourful display ever so slightly undermines Strange's serious chat about his part in causing half of life in the universe to be dusted away for 5 years before Thanos was ultimately defeated, but she certainly made the most of her MCU moment. And then some. And also, just a quick thanks for making Whatculture a part of your day today. And if you like what you see, then go and tap on that subscribe button, you lovely person.
Mobility Scooter Lady, Doctor Who. There are so many crazy goings on in every single episode of Doctor Who that it's difficult for a background actor to leave a lasting impression. That said, an unassuming lady riding a mobility scooter in Series 5's The 11th Hour managed to do just that. During the scene where Matt Smith's 11th Doctor faces off against Prisoner Zero in Ledworth's town square, he raises his sonic screwdriver into the air and lets off a signal that blows out street lamps, sets off car alarms, and sends a nearby fire engine speeding down the street. Naturally, this chaos causes the locals to panic, but none of them panic quite as much as Mobility Scooter Lady, who, in a quick 2-second shot, lets out a hilarious scream of terror as the sonic's energy causes her vehicle to speed out of frame. Now, did her scooter stop safely, or did she crash to a halt? We just don't know, but for the brief moment she was on screen, Mobility Scooter Lady gave Doctor Who fans an unexpectedly hearty chuckle. The big gulps, guys. Dumb and Dumber. Dumb and Dumber remains one of the most iconic and endlessly quotable comedies of all time, and perhaps its single most repeated line occurs when Lloyd leaves a convenience store, comes across two guys drinking big gulps and awkwardly says, "Big gulps, huh?" And then, "Alright, well, see you later," after getting no response. A few years ago, director Peter Farrelly not only confirmed that Jim Carrey improvised the awe-inspiring line on the spot, but that the two extras in the scene weren't even supposed to be there. The two men drinking big gulps were simply watching the scene being shot when Farrelly felt that they would fit the scene well and decided to drag them in. In his own words, quote, "They happened to have big gulps and Jim just ran with it." True story. And yet, despite doing nothing more than staring at Jim Carrey and giving him a knowing nod, they immediately entered the pantheon of legendary movie extras. The fact that they completed the shot without bursting into laughter at Carey's bizarre ad-lib is some award-worthy restraint.
The Goon who kicked their own ass, The Dark Knight Rises. Keeping in the world of superheroes for this next tremendous piece of extra work, Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy possesses some of the most gripping fight sequences ever to grace the genre. But while The Dark Knight Rises in particular certainly boasted some of the more brutal and jaw-dropping punch-ups the franchise had to offer, that threequel also contained one of the funniest mid-fight moments too. As Batman and Catwoman kick and thump their way out of trouble, Bane's henchmen find themselves being taken out one by the hard-hitting twosome. Well, most of them do anyway. One over-enthusiastic baddie appeared to have strangely got a little lost in the moment, and simply threw themselves to the ground whilst the Bat was occupied with a few other goons. Maybe the fear of tangling with the caped crusader was enough to make this Bane soldier crumble to the ground. Or perhaps one of the stunt workers involved in the multi-person skirmish simply forgot a piece of the fight routine, and this awkward tumble was the only way to save the rest of the take. Whatever the reason, the henchmen who conquered themselves quickly became a legend in their own right after this silly moment.
The woman chewing coffee. Friends. Due to its insane rewatchability factor, Friends is one of those shows that's consistently near the top of the streaming charts. This results in fans regularly finding new and interesting details hidden in classic episodes, like this highly unusual sight in the background of Season 6's The One Where Paul's the Man. This episode is fondly remembered for the lol-worthy final confrontation between Ross and Paul, played by a not-perfect Bruce Willis, the disapproving father of his girlfriend Elizabeth. But a much less obvious funny moment occurs right at the very start, when the main gang is hanging out in, where else, Central Perk. If you look behind Ross when he says the line, "Looks like I'm not the only one interested in fossils," there's a blonde extra who takes a swig of coffee from her mug and then starts to chew it. This woman immediately became a viral sensation, with fans debating the purpose of her seemingly unnecessary chewing motion. Whatever the case, stealing a scene away from the main Friends cast is no easy feat, but with her strange yet committed performance, this lady managed to do it. The Rohirrim, The Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. The charge of the Rohirrim is largely agreed to be one of the greatest scenes in the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy, and a big part of the reason for that is the clear enthusiasm of the 150 extras who took part in the sequence. Now, director Peter Jackson famously insisted that only extras who had read the novel and could recite Theoden's iconic battle cry could be placed at the front line of the battle, as they would most appreciate its importance and convey that gravity on screen. Fans have singled out a few particularly enthusiastic riders over the years, especially one who powers forward aggressively on his horse, selling the intensity of the scene incredibly well. Then there's the poor extra who fell off his horse and somehow wasn't harmed despite falling directly in the path of numerous horses behind him. Jackson apparently loved this so much that he kept it in the movie. These extras fully gave themselves over to Jackson's epic vision, and the results are absolutely spectacular. Guys, Sex and the City. Sex and the City's iconic opening titles are all about Sarah Jessica Parker's Carrie Bradshaw, but in certain fan circles, it was actually a random background extra who caused the biggest stir. Right at the end of this sequence, there's an extra stood behind Carrie who absolutely owns the entire shot with his confident strut, ripped physique, bizarre see-through top, and pants that are brighter than the sun. Though he was only on screen for a few seconds, this good-looking chap developed quite a fan following for obvious reasons. I mean, just look at the top comments on any popular YouTube upload of this scene, and you're bound to find people commenting on this eye-catching look, while also lamenting the fact that we'll never ever know who he is. Whether he chose his own costume or whether it was given to him on the day, see-through t-shirt guy managed to pull focus away from one of the biggest TV stars in the industry. The surprised barmaid, Terminator 2 Judgment Day. James Cameron has always had a knack for picking memorable extras, and perhaps the most canny selection of his entire filmography appears in one of Terminator 2's establishing scenes. When the new T-800 arrives in the present day and hits up a CD bar to acquire clothes and transportation, it scans all of the bar's patrons and staff to find someone of a comparative size whose clothes it can take. In one hilarious moment, it scans a waitress who is clearly both startled and a little bit excited by the presence of the naked man. She gives the T-800 a lingering stare down from top to bottom before smirking at the machine and letting out an intrigued hum. A great background play can provide that little extra something to punctuate a scene, and that's absolutely the case here.
Oh god, I can't feel my legs, Spider-Man. When the scene which sees Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker giving that professional wrestling stuff a try, during Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man comes up in conversation, most folks will be quick to remember the brilliant performance given by real-life wrestling icon Macho Man Randy Savage. Oh yeah. But before Bonesaw McGraw was ready to murder Spider-Man in the middle of the squared circle, a wonderful wrestling extra came along and offered another comical moment in the wake of being sent flying by the aforementioned Macho Saw. As Parker makes his way to the ring for his debut as the Amazing Spider-Man to the sound of boos, Bonesaw's last victim, a luchador who'd been smashed through a table, let Parker know what hell could be heading his way. Oh my god, oh my legs, oh god, I can't feel my legs were the memorable words that left Pete wondering whether he just made a monumental mistake, choosing to take a few bumps for some dollar. Macho Man and Maguire certainly provide their fair share of amusing moments throughout this much-loved wrestling superhero mashup, but it's this extra superb commitment to flailing around on a stretcher like he just lost a fight with King Kong that still sticks out as one of the funniest of the entire sequence.
Vince Kwan, Stargate Universe. Another random extra who fans latched onto in a big way, Vince Kwan, as he was eventually known, appeared in just a handful of Stargate Universe episodes as an ordinary bystander. Initially popping up in the show's first season, the character, known then by the community simply as the balding Asian guy, can be seen in the episode Faith, clutching his briefcase like his life depended on it. Even when surrounded by a crowd of people, he immediately stood out to fans of the show, so much so that an enormous 182-page thread was created in his honor on the Gate World forums. Bill Butt, the extra who played him, even started commenting on the thread once it gained traction. Vince's much anticipated return was in the season 2 episode Visitation, while fans have spotted him uncredited in other Stargate shows. The Ghostbusters, alright guy, Ghostbusters. Sometimes an extra might seem to draw a little bit too much attention to themselves, but the results end up becoming iconic and much loved anyway. That's certainly the case with the original Ghostbusters, where just ahead of the finale, an extremely enthusiastic redhead Ghostbusters fan can be seen jumping up and down, clapping and shouting, "Ghostbusters, alright, Ghostbusters." As it turns out, the man is now Emmy-winning makeup artist Eldo Ray Estes, who was determined enough to ensure that he was noticeable in the film and most certainly achieved that goal. And yet, his enthusiasm is both infectious and entirely believable within the context of the scene. Estes added that he was constantly recognized by passers-by during the summer of the movie's 1984 release, automatically making him both one of the best and most famous movie extras of all time.
Hold your horses, The Last Samurai. Animals, like children, are known for being somewhat unpredictable on a film set, and that's something you definitely don't need to tell one of the unfortunate extras pretending to be a soldier during one rather awkward scene in The Last Samurai. As Tom Cruise's Captain Nathan Algren dismounts his steed in the middle of some nearby troops, said horse suddenly decided it had a problem with one of the extras just trying their best to stay as still as humanly possible. Rather than throwing a tantrum, dropping his spear and demanding a word with the director after being kicked by the agitated animal though, this nut-cracked soldier kept his composure and resisted the urge to fall to his knees in agony. You can hardly blame the horse for being a bit freaked out by the sight of so many armoured blokes holding weapons around it, can ya? But that doesn't change the fact that in the time it takes to lift your boot off the ground, this extra likely went from being excited about the idea of possibly sharing a frame with the mighty Cruise to cursing the moment they were nudged to the front of their particular unit in the first place.
The Shifty couple, Community. As you'd expect from a whip-smart showrunner like Dan Harmon, Community is chock full of clever gags that you might not catch on your first viewing, like this shifty pair of extras seen in the background of Season 3's basic lupine urology. During the episode, our group of main characters walk across a street that's bustling with people. However, here, focus your eyes on the top right corner of the shot to see a man and woman exiting a building behaving in a rather odd manner. See, the man is zipping up his fly while the woman is wiping down her lips. And yeah, we probably don't need to tell you what the implication is here, and upon spotting this extremely subtle sight gag, community fans naturally assumed that Harmon and his writers were responsible for the idea. Apparently though, these extras were just acting of their own volition, and the showrunners had no clue about it. Most extras will just keep their heads down and do as instructed, which makes it really special when they do decide to do something fun with the few fleeting frames that they appear in. The saluting pilot, Independence Day. Few who have seen Independence Day will ever forget President Whitmore's instantly iconic rallying cry for humanity to stand up and fight back against the aliens. It is a scene both immensely cheesy and genuinely awesome. Actor Bill Pullman's stirring performance is a big part of the reason that the scene works, but it's impossible to ignore the efforts of one extra who really helps tie it all together. After Whitmore says the iconic quote of "Today we celebrate our Independence Day," director Roland Emmerich cuts to various faces in the crowd cheering before showing a pilot passionately saluting the president. The pilot in question is allegedly played by Darren Mangan, and despite appearing in the film for barely a second, gives one of its most persuasive performances. 25 years later, that beautiful salute remains a popular gif. Alexandria resident number 9, The Walking Dead. One thing that separates movie and TV extras is that TV extras have a chance to appear on the same show for years at a time. This is exactly the case with a Walking Dead extra called Alexandria resident number 9, who currently holds the record for the most appearances by an unnamed character. First appearing in the season 5 episode Forget, where in the opening 2 minutes she opens the Alexandria gate for Sasha, she's managed to survive all the way through, fighting off zombies, dealing with human drama, and performing guard duty, all the while without uttering a single line of dialogue. Like the other recurring extras on this list, Alexandria resident number 9 has developed quite the fan following, with some viewers praising her specific acting performances, like when she absolutely bucks it down the street in another season 5 episode Try, and others simply amazed that she's lasted this long when so many main characters have died. The clumsy stormtrooper, Star Wars: A New Hope. And of course, there was only ever going to be one extra in the number 1 spot, and that's the clumsy stormtrooper who bumps his head on a doorframe while entering the Death Star's control room in the original Star Wars. The scene has been a source of considerable amusement among fans over the last 4+ decades, many wondering how George Lucas could allow such a blatant gaffe to make it into the final cut of his movie. But it doesn't really matter why it's there, we're just so glad that it is there, because while the moment might only make the stormtroopers look even more useless, it is a textbook example of a happy accident that generated one of the funniest moments in blockbuster cinema history. Though many have claimed to be the extra in question, it appears that the real actor under the helmet was Laurie Good. As nobody called cut, he just assumed that the bump wasn't visible on camera, only to be surprised when he sat down to watch the film and saw that it was both on camera and also in the actual movie.